Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Tarrant County Five Stones Task Force. If you guys haven't gotten food, please feel free to get some. We will go ahead and get started. And welcome to our online group as well. We're going to start with our agency announcements, and just so you guys know, it's really important for our online community that you guys come to the front. And I know it's really uncomfortable, but we really want to share this with the whole group, and they need to see who's giving the announcement so they can help network and all of that. So if you guys have any announcements, I'm just going to ask anybody with announcements to come down to the front and just stand at the side, and we'll just have you come up one by one to give announcements. And as we're waiting to see if anybody has that, I want to give a shout out to Catering to Love, who is providing the food today. And they actually asked for just a couple minutes, so some of their volunteers can talk to you for a second.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Felicia. I look a little weird doing this, huh? So firstly, how's the meal? How are we doing with breakfast for lunch? Are we doing all right? Okay, there we go. Now, I've got a special surprise for y'all 4th of July, but I'm going to keep it a surprise. I hope y'all will join us for that because it will be very, very theme specific. And I don't know how the camera, oh, it's right here. I don't know how that camera works, but we've got a line of our next generation actually doing the serving to say thanks for what y'all do. They've been briefed as to why we're here at various levels of information there, but they know generally why we're here. And they said yes, so that they can give a thank you back to y'all. Also, they're out of school. You gotta put them to work, right? But guys, my serving line here, did you guys want to say thank you real quick to the folks that we are serving today? Just say, holler out thank you. You ready? Go.
Thank you.
There you go, guys. God bless y'all and thank y'all for all you do.
Awesome. All right, and we'll go ahead, and we do have at least one agency announcement.
Hi, good morning. My name is Sandy Hennip, and I'm the Executive Director of Unbound. And we're currently hiring for 2 positions. So we're hiring for an advocate to work with our adult survivors of trafficking, as well as an advocate to work with our youth and minor survivors of trafficking. So these positions are on call, and we're looking for people with social work degree or a similar degree in the helping profession. And yeah, I'd love to visit with people more if you have anybody you know that would be interested, or you can have people send their resumes to North Texas at unboundnow.org. So please send us good people.
And we have one more, and if you have anybody else with announcements, please feel free to come down also.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Erica Salinas, and I'm with the Texas Initiative Programs. We are a nonprofit based here out of Tarrant County. What we do is we partner with the local mental health authorities and give behavioral health services to youth ages 6 to 18. We do provide services outside of Tarrant in Denton and surrounding counties like Johnson, Parker, Palo Pinto, Hood, Erath, and Johnson counties. And what we're looking for what we call the community living support. These are just advocates who pretty much provide curriculum skill building to this clientele, whether in the home, at school, or in the community. We do prefer bachelor level education in social work, psychology, and several other related fields. But we are desperately looking for workers because we have just been pretty much bombarded with a ton of youth, a lot of them sex trafficking, victims. So we're really trying hard to service these kiddos. You can visit us on our website at www.tips-inc.org, and you can send resumes to esalinas@tips-inc.org. Thank you.
All right, it's a call to arms. We've had at least 2 agencies asking for people. So for all of you out there and online that are looking for somewhere to plug in, there's an opportunity for you. All right, we will go ahead and get started with our law enforcement updates. And we had a last minute switch. And so this month, Detective Orand is actually going to give the Fort Worth PD update.
Good morning. Yes, it was a last minute switch, so I don't know, hopefully I'll do Tim justice while I'm down here. So for the month of May, we had 8 cases and 17 tips. We've been going back to our weekly meetings in our unit just to make sure we're all on the same page. We know what each other is doing. We've also, we had a big discussion about our tips because we do receive so many. And even after investigating the tips that come in, it may have, some of the cases or some of the tips that come in, maybe they're not human trafficking, but they are related to human trafficking. And so it could, you know, as y'all know, it could be a promotion of prostitution, maybe a sexual assault. But by the time we've investigated and worked it, we've put in so many hours, but then we're not able to count it towards our stats. And so what we've decided to do as a unit is those tips that did turn into something, whether human trafficking or not, we will assign it a case and show, you know, that what we have done in that time, because it does, it's going to better represent what our unit is doing as far as time. And, you know, it does take time to investigate the tips. And we do take every tip seriously, because if someone has made it, if someone is concerned enough about it to either call us or email us, then we as a unit should be concerned enough to look into that tip and get back to the person who made the call or email to let them know, yes, we looked into it. And this is what the outcome was, or, you know, we looked into it, we weren't able, you know, to get any additional information, but, you know, please make sure to continue to call. Because like I said, if it was a concern enough for someone to call, then we as a unit, it should be concerning enough for us to investigate all the leads that we have. So we did have a 3-day operation during the TMS spring race a few weeks ago, where we did encounter 17 females. 2 of them did, we did see indicators with those 2, or with 2 of them, and were able to get them with an advocate group. But we also had 4 that they were requesting assistance just because they wanted to get out of the life that they were living. So we were, that was a good thing. So, so as far as a couple of the cases, we have one that we're currently working. Officer Menzies did a human trafficking class for our office. We did an 8-hour course, and I was able to sit in there with them. And we had a couple of detectives in there from our domestic violence unit. And as many of y'all are aware, human trafficking, domestic violence, a lot of those, they intersect with each other. And we had one detective who came up to Officer Menzies after the class and was like, if I would have known what I learned today, he said, I have a couple of cases where my victim in my domestic violence case was possibly being trafficked, but I didn't know the signs to look for. And then it was very interesting because then when we came back to work the next day, I actually received, or Felicia received a call from the DA where it was a domestic violence case, and the defense attorney sent ads to the prosecutor and said, hey, this isn't a reliable witness. You know, she's a prostitute. And the DA had enough, you know, knowledge of human trafficking that contacted us and said, I would like for y'all to meet with this victim because maybe there's more going on than what we thought in the beginning. And so it was funny that it was actually that detective who came up to Officer Menzies. It was one of his cases. So we are in the process of meeting with her. Then we had just one real big tip that we have. We had a father who called about his 16-year-old who was sending nude photos to adult males in exchange for DoorDash gift cards. And Officer Menzies had talked to the father, and he had already deleted all the photos off the phone. All evidence of child pornography was lost. So, you know, just if y'all have, you know, just as a reminder, you know, we tell them not to delete anything because that's evidence that we need in order to build that case. So just moving forward, we had, you know, made sure that he was aware of that. We had one, Officer Menzies was contacted by Hamilton County Sheriff's Office. They reached out for assistance with a trafficking case that they had, and he went out there, spent a few days out there helping them, and but it has been forwarded to HSI. And then the last one, kind of what I was telling you, when we, you know, take all of our tips very seriously. We had someone that they had left a note on a patrol car that said a ministry organization was involved with a sex trafficking ring. We were able to go online. We went, you know, trying to find any information. And the only thing that we were able to find was they did have a Cash App. It looked more like a scam, that they were just looking to get money, didn't have anything to do with human trafficking. But just going back to, you know, we do investigate all the tips that come in, and you know, we do take them very seriously. And like I said, if anyone is concerned enough to make a call or an email to us, you know, it's our job to, you know, make sure that we do investigate all of the tips and things that come in from our community. So I think that's it. Thank you.
That's just sweet.
All right.
Decided that we need to go.
Next, we'll have the Tarrant County Sheriff's Office come up, and I want you guys to give a warm welcome. They have a new sergeant, Sergeant Harwell.
Morning all, and thank you for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with a bunch of people that are passionate about this. As they said, my name is Richard Harwell. I'm the sergeant with the Tarrant County Human Trafficking Task Force, new to the position. I've been there for about a month. Prior to that, a lot of experience in investigations, but this is my first time on the human trafficking side of it. Luckily, I have a team that's very experienced, know what they're doing. So as far as May goes, it was a very productive month for my team. We partnered with Fort Worth and with Denton County while we were doing the NASCAR operations over that weekend. While Fort Worth did the outreach, we did the demand side. For those of you that don't know what that is, that's where we bring in the Johns who are soliciting the prostitution. The team was able to make 17 arrests within Tarrant County and another 11 in Denton County over that weekend. So very proud of them for what they did and the victims that they potentially helped with that. As far as tips go, well, we've got quite a few in. We've been working with our partners with Fort Worth, helping with some of theirs. They have some excess they needed some assistance with. We also have an intel unit that's digging up new information, new tips. I can't reveal the sources of where that's coming from, but they're giving us a lot of things to work on that we're helpful, going to be able to pull people out of this. Also, some things that we're looking at doing in the next couple of months that are on the schedule. We're working with John Peter Smith Hospital and doing some training for their medical staff, and also with Cook's Children, so they can look for signs of potential victims and some outreach so that we can help these kids and these young ladies as this is going on. Once again, just honored to be here. I know that was quick, but thank you for what you do.
Okay, and now we'll get into our main presentation, and I'm going to have Stephanie Bird, one of our steering committee members, come up and introduce our speakers.
Good morning. It is my great privilege to introduce today's speakers, Sandy Hennip and Chris Cage. Sandy Hennip joined Unbound in August of 2020 as our executive director. Since coming on board, she has overseen the growth of Unbound from 8 to 23 staff and the addition of Unbound's Underground, a 24/7 drop-in center for youth. Sandy holds a master's in social work from Baylor University and has over 20 years of experience working with vulnerable populations through refugee resettlement stateside, as well as equipping others through team development internationally. She is moving Unbound forwards in its mission to support survivors and resource communities to fight human trafficking. Chris Cage serves as the director of Unbound's Underground, a 24/7 drop-in center for trafficked and exploited youth. He has led Unbound in the opening of the Underground and now is overseeing this thriving center for youth in need of a safe place in Tarrant County. His passion is for serving at-risk youth. Prior to joining Unbound, Chris served as Senior Vice President and General Counsel for Brinks Home Security and Brinks Incorporated for 34 years. Chris serves on the board of Hope Farm, Alert Ministries, and Spoken For, which all focus on youth at risk. Chris also served as a volunteer for 3 years, working with youth in the Henry Way Juvenile Detention Center. Chris has a law degree from SMU and an accounting degree from Texas Tech. Sandy and Chris, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much for presenting today.
All right. Yeah, we're really excited to get to share with you guys about the Drop-In Center. So we opened just about 19 months ago, and it's been quite a ride, and it's really been amazing seeing the gap that it's filled in the community. So I'm going to start by just giving you guys kind of a big picture overview of Unbound as well as the Drop-In Center, and then Chris will move more into kind of the ins and outs of how it looks every day. All right, so for those of y'all that aren't familiar with Unbound, our mission is to support survivors and resource our community in the fight against human trafficking. And we do that through 4 different programs. So the first is our survivor advocacy, which is what y'all may be most familiar with. And that's serving all ages, all types of trafficking 24/7. And all genders, all ages, all types, all hours, basically all things. And so we have an amazing team. So the top to last row is our team, including, I just included anyone in that, but really thankful for the team we get to work with. And so our advocates are available for 24/7 crisis response. And that's really going out just when that may be at the hospital, partnering with law enforcement, but whenever a survivor is recovered and really needs an advocate to come alongside, our team goes out, as well as being available for ongoing case management. And so really I know we use that word advocacy a lot, but really what that looks like is really our team just coming alongside survivors and walking with them in the healing journey. And so it's partnering with other community partners, seeing where the gaps are and really stepping into those spaces. So again, that could be accompaniment to a medical appointment. It could be going with a parent to an art at a school. I mean, really just stepping into those spaces to really provide that support. Our drop-in center is what we'll talk about today, so I won't go into more detail on that now. Prevention and awareness. So right now that's looking primarily at a partnership with Fort Worth ISD, where we're doing prevention education in the school system, as well as a lot of community awareness and professional training. So our drop-in center, what we're here to talk about. So again, we opened October 31st of 2020. So it's been about 19 months. And really it's really just picked up. Chris and I were just reflecting on this. Really just this last quarter, we saw half as many youth in one quarter as we saw all of last year. And so we're really thankful. Like we knew the safe place was needed. We've been seeing more and more youth come through in the last few months. So again, the drop-in center, for those that aren't familiar, it's a place where youth can come up to 24 hours. And it's really just a safe place for them to come to get basic needs met and to get support for ongoing services. So if that's identifying help, needing help with housing, really whatever the need is, our staff help them make that next connection. It's a safe place site. So if y'all are familiar with that, that diamond, that yellow diamond that you'll see like at QT, that sort of thing, the underground is one of those. So the youth can see that sign if they need a safe place. They just come to the building. We're housed at one safe place, the Family Justice Center. And so again, just an easy way for youth to access We're open 24/7, 365, and again, limited to 24-hour stay, but offer recurring day services. So again, we'll unpack a little bit more kind of what it actually looks like there, but I'll let that be Chris in a minute. So I think one more thing I just want to touch on before I hand over to Chris is just really the theory and the heart behind the drop-in center. So when we were looking to fill this need in the community, we did a lot of research on the population we were going to be working with. And one thing that we found was a really strong correlation between youth that are homeless and youth that are vulnerable to trafficking. And so one of the studies that we accessed, it's a study done out of Arizona, and it's an 8-year-long study that they did specifically with homeless youth, looking at what the vulnerabilities are. And that study found that 40% of these youth that were homeless had experienced trafficking, which again, I mean, just the weight of that, you know, these kids that are on the street that really a lot of them, because they need a safe place to stay, had to exchange sex for safe housing. And so, so that was one of the drivers of the drop-in center for us, was creating that safe place for youth that are on the street. Since we've been open, we've seen similar statistics. So we've seen about 39% of the youth that have come in have experienced trafficking, and 55% are what we call clear concern for trafficking. So they show the indicators that make them probable to have been victims of trafficking. One of the other things that we saw in this study was the other vulnerabilities that could make a youth more susceptible to trafficking. So let me switch to this here. So it's everything from addiction, depression, PTSD, self-harm, trauma history. You know, of the youth that we've seen come to the underground, we've seen about 55% identify a mental health diagnosis. We've seen about 66% having been victims of multiple different forms of victimization. So again, trafficking being one, but having experienced multiple other victimizations as well. And for our victims of trafficking, we've seen about 90% in those two categories. So again, those that have been victims of trafficking, 90% more likely to have a mental health diagnosis, as well as having experienced multiple forms of victimization. I feel like I'm just giving you a lot of data. We'll get to the heart soon, don't worry. I think one more thing I just want to share, just kind of on the theory, is just kind of the concept, or really the things that we were really thinking through as we opened the drop-in center. And so so one of those things specifically was the goal of being what we call a low barrier facility. So as you guys may know that work in the field, often survivors have to jump through a lot of hoops to get into a facility or different helping programs. And we really wanted the drop-in center to be as low barrier as possible, where both victims and those that are vulnerable to trafficking can come in without any questions asked. And so what that looks like is, even though our mission at Unbound is to work with survivors of trafficking, because we know the high vulnerabilities of youth that are needing a safe place towards trafficking, just them needing a safe place is enough criteria for them to come to the drop-in center. So they don't have to outcry as having been a victim. We actually know that often many victims don't even realize that they've been victims. And so, so there's no requirement or no need to share a victimization to come in the doors. They just need a safe place. One of the other pieces of being low barrier is youth don't need an ID. You know, we often work with youth that have lost identification or don't have a form of ID. And so for the drop-in center, again, they don't need a form of identification to come in. They don't need a reservation. So they can call, they can just walk in the front door and need a safe place, and they can come in. Let's see what else. Yeah, and again, I think the goal is as much as possible to have as few hoops as possible they need to jump through to be able to come in. You know, I think one of the other things that I think really has been a value for us is, you know, at Unbound, we've always done the prevention education and we've always done the survivor advocacy. The drop-in center for us has really helped us kind of be that middle space of that ground between the prevention education and the advocacy. And so, we've seen at the drop-in center being able to identify youth that previously hadn't been identified as victims of trafficking, and then to be able to get them connected into advocacy or other supportive services. We've also seen, I think in that being able to prevent youth from being trafficked. Again, the statistics tell us that when kids are on the street, there's a much higher susceptibility to trafficking. And so just having a safe place to come, I think really does help. It's just one more barrier, right, to these youth being trafficked. It makes leaving more feasible. So we've seen youth that are victims come to the drop-in center, and at times we've seen them return to their trafficker. But then we've also seen them a month, 2 months later, calling to come back when they're ready to flee and knowing that they have a safe place to come back to. And so I think for us, just that value of having that safe place to receive them is really key. And I think the other piece, again, is being able to be connected in with ongoing advocacy services. So again, if y'all don't know our advocates, you want to get to know them. They're pretty phenomenal. But they really just come in and walk with survivors wherever they're at. And I think the last thing that's really just a key value of the drop-in center is really youth being the ones that are driving their helping process. And by that I mean, I think so often victims have just been, they've been controlled and they've been told what to do, right? And so for us, when youth come to the drop-in center, we want them to feel like they can own their helping process, whatever that looks like. And so what that means is they identify what their goals are for when they're with us. They identify what success looks like at the end of their 24 hours. It looks really practically like them deciding, what do they do during their time? Do they want to start with getting something hot to eat? Do they want to take a shower? Do they want to take a rest? Really, it's just trying to give back power and control from the time they walk through the door. And then the picture there is of the soft interview room that's housed at the drop-in center. And this is a place where forensic interviews can be taken. And again, the thought behind that is as much as we can, we don't want survivors to have to be shuffled all over the city to get their needs met, right? And so, we worked with Fort Worth PD to set up a soft interview room where that forensic interview can be done in a place that's trauma-informed. I mean, there's weighted blankets, there's essential oils, everything in that room just to make it a bit more comfortable for having to tell their story. So I'll pause and hand it over to Chris.
Thank you. And that was a lot of great information from Sandy, and I'm sure at this point everybody has exactly the same question on their mind. Is the underground more like a Waffle House or a lighthouse? We're going to delve into that today. So how is the underground like the Waffle House? We're always open, we're a good place to connect, don't require reservations, and we serve both waffles and pancakes and lots of other things. You have the choice. But the reason for this goofy analogy of mine, which I'm kind of known for, I guess, is we want to express the idea of the impact we can make in a short amount of time. So one of the most important things you can remember is that it's a place for anybody that serves youth at risk to bring a survivor anytime, day or night, 365 days a year, and the no reservations is real, that we're available to you. When we have a youth come to us for the first time, the way we look at our goals is we just have two broad goals: to get them to a safe place emotionally and to get them to a safe place physically. Do all that in 24 hours. And when I talk about emotionally, it's almost everyone in that situation. The first time coming to the underground, they're 22 or under and they don't have a place to stay. They're in crisis. And so we want to get them grounded. And our philosophy of care in doing that is to make them feel valued and safe and respected. We address their felt needs first, find out if they're hungry, tired, need a shower, need new clothes, and we can address those. We have just a fantastic staff. That we're so blessed by the quality of people we have, that they're smart, they're compassionate, and they really do care about what's best for these clients. And I have one word circled on here in yellow. It's Wilbur. I want to make sure that I did not forget to mention Wilbur. And I think this is the only presentation we've done that did not have a picture of Wilbur in it. I just realized that we. Oh, it's on the agenda. Our string is intact. But for real, Wilbur is important. That sometimes he is the first one that the youth can connect with, and he brings down the walls, and he's been great. So,
He's an emotional support dog,
yeah.
for those that don't know who he is.
So a gigantic 15-pound golden doodle. So the other goal was get the youth to a safe place physically. And what I mean there is, in that 24 hours, we're going to get them to a placement, which is a challenge. But we've gotten very good at it. Part of our intake process is to talk to the youth about their victimization history, which is a very difficult thing to go through, but important to being able to get them to the right placement. So for example, what we do is we look at their victimization history and other things about them, whether they're minor or adult, et cetera, and match them up with our list of resources. We have a long list of resources, lots of good contacts, and try to narrow down a list for the client to work on for placement. And we make them a short list. We try to coach them on what the call is going to be like, even to the point of letting them know the first place you call is not going to be a yes. So, because a lot of times they can just feel really dejected by that first no, but we just prepare them for that. We practice interviews, and we've been really successful in getting that done. Safety planning is something we try to do with every client. And when I talk about safety planning, a lot of you probably know, but just to make sure, I think of it again in terms of physical and emotional. And emotionally, we talk to them about what things upset you and how can we keep those, how can you keep those from overwhelming you? And so they're the decision maker in this safety planning. We just kind of walk them through what to think about. And like if they need a fidget, if that would help them to not be overwhelmed. But it's really good for them to be able to identify what's happening in their body and how to respond to it. The physical aspect of safety planning is what you would think, is to talk to them about who and where has not been safe for you. Again, they're kind of guiding the answers to that, and we're just walking along with them. And they answer the question, well, how can I keep from being hurt again? What are the things I can do from being hurt again? And along with that, we make sure that they identify safe people to call, including us, including their advocate, and just other resources in case they need them. Now, I'm going to make sure we're there. Yeah. We have what I'm going to call our Waffle House stories. So these are some stories that exemplify the impact that Underground has had in a short amount of time. Now we're using names, they're not real names, and they're not even totally real stories in the sense that they're compilations of various stories. So all the facts in there are true, but they're from a variety of different clients. So I'm going to start and tell you about a client we're calling Angela. Angela is a young lady who was brought to us late at night by law enforcement and community partners. She had a history of running away from home and had been actively trafficked. Angela seemed tiny and had a deer in the headlights look as she walked through the door. I was able to spend 15 minutes with her and we swapped dad jokes. She laughed and she made me laugh. Wilbur sat with her when law enforcement talked to her in the soft interview room. After the interview, Angela painted a picture that is still hanging on our wall. Our on-call advocate arrived with all manner of fidgets and stuffed animals and sat with Angela as she painted. Angela was slow to warm up, but she eventually engaged with the advocate. Angela was taken to a placement in the early hours of the morning The Unbound advocate has stayed in contact with her for over a year and continues to visit her at various placements. Angela has stabilized and is doing well. Sandy's going to do the next story.
Oh, that's actually
Yeah,
easy.
yeah, very good.
And yeah, one thing I just want to tag on real quick to the story Chris just shared is I had the pleasure of being at the underground when one of the Angelas came through. We'll just say as this is a compilation, and it was so powerful, you guys. Again, I mean, she came in legit in a state of trauma and crisis, rightly so, from what she had experienced, and really within just a matter of time, with Wilbur, the emotional support dog, and I think just Chris and his personality, who he is, he's just very safe for youth very quickly. And so to see her be able to, like, he sat on the floor with her, and I think that just kind of brought a level of peace. And I walked in and it was a different kid. I mean, they were telling jokes and he was just being goofy, and it was like she felt safe and she felt comfortable. And you know, we call these the waffle off stories because it's amazing in 24 hours what can happen. And I've been blown away the feedback youth have given of saying they felt safe for the first time. They felt valued for the first time. They felt like their life mattered. And this is all because a compassionate, caring adult is just willing to sit with them, is willing to just be normal and tell jokes. And so, you know, as Chris talks about his dad jokes, which I mean, there's youth that like roll their eyes when he comes in because he starts telling jokes, but there's so much power and intentionality in that, I think, just to really help normalize these kids. So anyway, so again, this next story is also a compilation, and we're calling this young lady Hope. So Hope is a 20-year-old trans female who'd been trafficked in a nearby city and had been beaten, strangled. I mean, just horrific experience. You know, she lives in a constant fear of her trafficker, and you know, just always feels like she's being watched. And so, so she called our 24/7 line in need of a safe place to stay. And so we were able to Uber her to the drop-in center. And as the staff was meeting with her, you know, like Chris said, you know, they'll talk through what their story has been and what were the different victimizations. And it's a really hard conversation to have. And she was like, you know, you might as well just check them all. Like I've experienced all of this. And so, you know, the staff is engaging with her, and at the end of there, they're like, hey, I know you don't feel this now, but I promise you're going to feel better in the morning. And so she got something to eat, she took a rest. And the next morning she was like, hey, I don't know what's next, but I feel better. Like, I just feel like I've got I've got something under me. And so that next day we had one of our advocates come out. They met with her and just started that consistent process of connecting with her. They did some different placement calls with her. And she's been one that we've seen come back and forth to the underground over time. So again, she came in this moment of crisis, started working with an advocate, and when she's needed a safe place, she's known that she can come back. And oh, this was powerful. I think she was talking maybe with Chris, but she said, I feel like you guys have saved my life. And again, I don't say that for it to be like, wow, the underground. I say that because, you know, these kids are the hero of their story, these youth. And, you know, I think the value of just at that safe place for them, right, where they can land, and just have someone speak that word of hope has been so powerful. So back to you. Oh man, sorry, you didn't see that.
No.
Okay.
So the only thing I did want to point out is, can you read the napkin? It's okay to love yourself. A youth wrote that, so I thought that was really cool. And that's 3 of our staff there. So let's take a look at the lighthouse. How's the underground like a lighthouse? We're always right where you left us and there when you need us. The light is always on. We don't force anyone to go anywhere, but we do speak the truth, and we're a beacon in the fog and steadfast in the storms. Oh, Wilbur is in the picture. I should have known. He snuck in. So what I'm talking about there with the lighthouse is what we're talking about, is the long-term availability. And we don't, I want to make clear, we don't see ourselves as a long-term placement. And in fact, what we're always working towards is getting a long-term placement. And again, another analogy, I kind of see us as the help desk in a giant healthcare facility. That somebody comes in, they know they're hurting, they're not sure quite what it is. We talk to them and then try to guide them to the right place. And then sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. And then they come back to us and then we reset and try to send them back to them to get the long-term help that they need. And I know this group is very familiar with survivors and the cycle that they go through, that if they do get to the point where they can leave their trafficker and then they get engaged and getting help, and very often the trauma bond will kick in and they'll return to the trafficker and then they'll leave again and get help and the trauma bond kicks in again, and there's that cycle. And I've read a few places the magic number is 7. I don't know the science behind that, but that's what I've read in different places. And similar to that, it's and even maybe even part of it is with placements. It can be the same thing. We'll send them to a placement and they're not able to keep the rules. And so, and then they got to kind of start over. But the point of this lighthouse thing and this long-term availability is that we're there to come back to. They can always come back to us to reset. We can help them with making it through the placement, like they need a mental health assessment. We can help guide them to the right place. If they're having trouble not being able to live without their phone, we can kind of coach them a little on that and why it's important that they have those rules. And again, it's just to prep them for being successful at their next place. And one of the important things we offer, we have a great counselor, Carolina Utz, and we have her, she's available to our clients several hours a week, and those hours are always filled up. But she's able to counsel the youth and oftentimes their family too, because there is often a family dynamic that's involved. Stages of change, this is Sandy.
Yeah. So again, you guys may be familiar with the stages of change, so I'll just touch on that briefly. But again, the idea is, survivors will come really at any place along the, it's not really a continuum, it's not linear, but at a place of contemplation of being willing to change. And so pre-contemplation is that place of really not having intention for change. Contemplation, being aware there's a problem, but with no commitment to action. Preparation is obviously the preparation stage of preparing for change. Then you've got the action phase, maintenance, sustaining change, and then relapse, falling back into patterns. And so I feel like as youth come to the drop-in center, they may be at any place along the stages of change, and that may even change while they're with us. And so I think that one thing that's important for our staff is identifying, okay, where is this youth at in the changing process, and how do I intervene based on where they're at, and what does that look like? We use something called motivational interviewing, and so that's a tool of just really trying to help capitalize on kind of where they're feeling that desire for change and really helping them move towards that next place. And so we say it's an upward spiral. So really with each relapse, hopefully the cycle happens quicker, right? From pre-contemplation, contemplation, action, etc. So anything, Chris, you'd add to that?
No, just the other way I look at it is,
Yeah.
the spiral doesn't help you. What I think of the jagged line, that it's steadily moving up, but up, down, and hopefully we're getting them in an upward direction. One of the things that we saw at the end of last year and the beginning of this year and continuing on now is a tremendous uptick in youth that would come just for the day. So they'd be staying at a shelter or even coming from home and they just want to come to the underground for a day, to the point that we'd have 8 or 9 a day. And that's a lot for our little operation. And so I realized we need to do something here to make this valuable and also to keep the staff not from leaving. So we need to put some structure around it. We're calling it empowerment programming, but by structure, I mean day services start at this time and they end at this time. And these are the hours that we serve hot food. And it's not going to be, you're going to come here and watch TV and eat. It needs to be more than that. And I mean that in the best way possible, is that we want to make sure we're actually helping them. And we do have them come with goals. We ask them to set goals. And everything is according to the client's particular situation. So we know they're all different. So they're not all setting the same goals, and they're not even capable of reaching the same things. But we work with them in identifying what would be helpful to them. So for many, it's looking for housing or looking for the placement, it's working on GED. Some youth have trouble at home, trouble at school, and they've got permission to do their homework at the underground. And I have to say, we had a really good track record in terms of grades on that. And so, again, we're not trying to take the place of a long-term placement. We're trying to prepare them for that and get them in that. We have done, some of those goals could be things like painting a picture, memorizing some kind of passage. We've got a long list of things that they can be working on. But we've also realized that to do this right, there's some tough love involved. And so if somebody's getting high at night and they want to come at 2 a.m. to sleep it off, maybe once or twice we'll do that, but that's not going to help them in the long run, right? And so what I say is we might be a lighthouse, we might be a Waffle House, but we're not a flop house. So we will say, don't come high. You know, that if they show up high, then we'll actually decline services. And again, that's for some clients that are in that spot where we think that's where their next level achievement needs to be. And that can look like a lot of things in terms of those boundaries and helping them to reach higher for themselves. So I think now we have some lighthouse stories. I know we have some lighthouse stories. But again, these are examples of how our staying available to clients has been able to help them. Here's a story about Ruth. Ruth is 18 and had been trafficked out of state, but left the life and completed a residential recovery program for survivors. She became friends with a girl a few years older than her who invited her to take a trip to Texas to spend time with her family. When Ruth got off the plane, she quickly realized she was walking into the arms of traffickers. Her new boyfriend got her addicted to cocaine, and she became one of his favorite moneymakers. After several months, she was able to escape her trafficker by running away in the middle of the night with only the clothes she was wearing. She didn't even have time to put on shoes. Ruth stayed at a couple different shelters and then came to the underground. Her first night at the underground, Ruth was connected with an Unbound advocate who found her an emergency shelter where she returned to the underground for day services for several weeks. Ruth started seeing Carolina, the counselor, on a regular basis. We assisted Ruth in getting placement at a long-term facility for survivors of trafficking. Ruth has now returned home to be with her family, and it's doing well.
In this picture up here is from one of our art classes. So we have a local artist that'll come out and do art classes for the youth. And again, that's just kind of part of what Chris talked about, the daytime empowerment program. So that's what that picture is from there. All right, I'm going to share with you guys a story of a young girl we're calling Brandy. And Brandy first got connected with Unbound when she was 16 years old. And she'd been someone that had repeatedly run from home. She had been abused by a family member at a young age and actually abused by a teacher at the age of 10. So by the age of 14, Brandy was being trafficked and really just suffered repeated physical abuse. She'd disappear for weeks or months on end. But every time she would run or be on the run for a while, after a few months, she'd reach back out to her advocate and would make contact. And so once the underground opened, this provided a safe place for her advocate to bring her. And so Brandy, now 17, would come to the drop-in center for long periods of time. Let's see. She was depressed, clearly experiencing PTSD. Like Chris mentioned, Brandy was one that really was bonded to her trafficker, and she would leave, but always would return. So again, there was this cycle of she'd reached out to her advocate, she'd come to the drop-in center, and from both her advocate as well as the drop-in center staff, they continued to reiterate the message, Brandy, you're worthy of respect. Your life matters. No one should be hurting you. And she kept hearing the same message. And one day it was really beautiful because we were at the drop-in center and Brandy was like, you know what? I should be respected. And this is after years, you guys. I mean, like, again, the process can take so long, but after years, Brandy finally owned it for herself. And she was like, I do deserve respect. My life does matter. I shouldn't be treated like this. And she was like, okay, like, what else can y'all do to help me? And so we offered counseling, and she was like, all right, I think I'm ready to engage in counseling. And she had been at multiple placements over the years. I mean, again, we've worked with this young lady for 3-4 years at this point, but she was like, hey, I'm ready to give a placement a go again. And so she went, and she was successful. And so, we saw one of the Brandys, again, these are multiple people, right? We saw one of them this past week, and she looked like a different young lady. I mean, her face had changed, her countenance has changed. And I think what was so powerful for me is hearing her really own the value that had been spoken over her for so many years, her owning that for herself, and her really believing that dignity and that she was worthy of respect. She said to the staff, you've showed me love, you fought for me, and now I'm going to fight for myself. And it's just so powerful to get to see that change and to get to see that really that ownership of worth and value. So. Yeah.
So in conclusion, we're both the Waffle House and the Lighthouse. I think, are we doing easy questions now? So do we have any easy questions? But we'll take a hard one.
It's relatively easy. So you guys have seen an increase in the last couple of years. What does that look like as far as numbers? How many did y'all serve last year versus?
So I'm going to do it by memory as best I can, but these are pretty close. So 220 different clients in 2021, and they comprise 750-ish visits. So we're like at 3.5 visits, but the reality is that some will come for one day and some will come for 7 or 14, but the average is about that. What we've seen, and what Sandy made a reference to earlier, is the first quarter were at double that pace. So it was like 100 different clients in the first quarter, and they made 356 visits. So that's why it was good news and scary news all at the same time.
And I think I don't have the current total, but I think we're at over 1,200 visits since we've opened. So again, I think we're just so thankful that you feel free to come once, but they also feel free to come back again and again. And I think it just again speaks to that feeling safe. And so I think it's why we're going to continue to just increase what kind of structure around what we're calling this environment. So it's actually had that in my notes to share.
So
Yes.
the word spreading, I'm sorry, the word spreading among the that are out there as well, was that?
That's a great point. And yes, that they'll meet somebody at the Salvation Army and bring them with them. Youth are telling other youth, which is really cool. There's a question right there.
Yeah, do you have a percentage of long-term health?
I don't think I have it. You mean percentage of getting into placement?
Yeah, like the people that are coming, are they going to the next step? Do you have that percentage?
So I think for sure, we've seen majority, I feel like almost every that's come in, we've seen take a next step. So if they're not ready for a long-term placement or that it's not available, we've seen short-term placement. So often that could be a local shelter that they'll go to, but it's very rare that we'll have to see people back on the streets. So at least making that next step.
What makes it a little hard to answer is the circumstances are so different. So a good answer for some clients is to go back home. That home really is safe, and they're arguing about not being able to use their phone after 10 o'clock. Like, you need to go home. And for some, that they don't have a trafficking history, they're just trying to get housing. And, like track has been a tremendous partner in that. But then those with a trafficking history, to Sandy's point, I think we're really high percentage.
And City Square Track, if y'all aren't familiar, that's probably one of our bigger referral sources. And so they work with youth that have aged out of the foster care system. So youth, I think it's 18 to 24. And they help with life skills, placement, that sort of thing. And so we'll often be kind of a stepping stone for those youth. So City Square Track will be working with them on their long-term placement, but they may just need a place to crash for the night. And so they would come stay at the drop-in center, and then their track worker would continue working with them from there. It's called City Square Track, and it's TRAC. And so they're connected with Department of Family and Protective Services, I think officially under the covering of ACH, maybe, is that right? No, it says no, separate. City Square Track is what it's called then.
So, and with them, it's really often they're staying in one of the shelters while they're working with track. They're staying in the shelters at night and they come to us in the day. But, like if they need to work on their ID, we can help with that, or things that kind of facilitate their next step. The other thing, like job applications, I didn't mention that.
There's shelters for underage.
ACH, really. Okay. Jordan.
So for your day services, what are the boundaries that are in place? Like, do they have, well, you answered my question, but like, do they have to stay at the underground to be able to utilize those services? So my next question would be, do they have to be experiencing homelessness, or are there any other boundaries that keep them from being able to utilize the day services? Like, is there, outside of age, is there kind of okay, at this point, these services are no longer?
Not really. I mean, there's not, it's, they have to be safe to themselves and other people. But there are things, the ones that they can use remotely that come to mind are counseling and also GED. They can both be done online. And I haven't, there's a few, like I mentioned, youth that live at home that will come in. And I've never seen that to a point of abuse. It's, I mean, that it's causing a concern for us. It's sometimes that they just can't get along at home and they need that. And we can kind of help bridge it. And really, those are some of my favorite stories, is when we get children reunited with safe parents. But are we out of time?
Okay.
It'll be safe.
Right, the first one, in launching a new initiative in Tarrant County, what lesson learned would you share with other Five Stones participants that they may want to embrace if/when they consider launching new human trafficking projects in North Texas?
We might need Stephanie. She was really the architect of the underground, and gets the credit, and went through all that pain of launching a new initiative.
Yeah, sure. I would just say, We're so blessed to have a community. This project is supported in so many different ways. So, be well integrated. All the things to so many people. It's awesome. And, any new project, you're gonna learn a lot, so just go into it with that mindset, learner's mindset. Second question, if a church wanted to partner with your organization, what might that look like?
One thing came immediately to mind. One of the best ways that somebody could help us is money for Ubers. And the Uber gift cards or just money earmarked for that, that's really helpful because those youth coming from the shelter, we usually get them an Uber. Or if you can get bus passes, day bus passes. The other thing is the clothing we have is gently used, and so the clothing is good. I very much appreciate this question. In terms of food, what doesn't work for us is like giant containers that you get like a giant container of peanut butter it's single serve stuff works good for us.
Yes, I'd say whoever that is, if y'all would reach out to us, we can have our community outreach person be in touch. But there's volunteer opportunities at the drop-in center, again, being 24/7. There's often blocks that aren't covered by a volunteer. And so if somebody was wanting to volunteer, that's a great way. We've seen church groups get involved. We've seen church groups do maybe like a donation drive. I'm trying to think what else.
Volunteers is a good one.
Yeah, volunteering. We have a prayer guide that's specifically geared towards faith communities, and so we could send that out. So there's lots of ways. So reach out at North Texas at Unbound Now. Hey, could you put that in the chat? And Brad can correct it if it's spelling is wrong. Unboundnow.org. But yeah, we'd love to reach out to that church group and see. But it's been really, I think that's been, like Stephanie's point, seeing different faith communities plug in has really been just such an asset of, I think, the work we've done at the drop-in center. So,
And I have a broader answer to that too. And then it's that if you're concerned about trafficking, there's tons of things that go into it. So if you help parents, if you mentor parents, if you mentor youth, if you help mentor somebody trying to get out of pornography that's addicted to pornography, if you fight that issue, there's any way that you help youth prevents trafficking, and any way that you support families. Teachers. 2 thumbs up.
Thank you, Sandy and Chris. So now you guys know of this great resource we have in the community. And I mean, this is best practice stuff, throughout the nation, having these drop-in centers. So take advantage of it if you have an agency that works with kiddos and you need somewhere to refer them to. Thank you for coming out today, and we will see you all next month.